Today I'm going to be looking at all 9 Spider-Man movies, and I'll be ranking them from the worst to the best. Although, hold up. Does something feel off to you? What could it be? I got it. Give me a sec. Whoa, there we go. Now let's get them ranked. Before we get started, I wanted to give you guys a quick public service announcement. The Cosmic Broadcast is now officially on a couple social media platforms. So if you're interested, click the links that are in the description and follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Now with that out of the way, grab your web shooters, throw on your spandex, and let's get moving.
Spider-Man does whatever a spider can.
Coming in at 9 and at last place is Amazing SpiderMan 2. Quick precursor. I don't hate this movie. In fact, I don't really think I hate any of these Spider-Man movies. But if there was one that had to take one for the team and end up last, this would probably be it. This definitely has one of the more messier plots of any of the Spider-Man movies. We literally get an opening of Peter's parents as secret agents? Yeah, we're already not starting off on the right track. It's literally like the studio wanted everything that could possibly fit into this movie. To me, it felt like they were like, oh, we need Spider-Man saving New Yorkers, but we also still need Green Goblin. But yet we don't have a Green Goblin. All right, make it Harry. Oh, but we need to introduce Harry. Okay, quick, let's shoehorn in about him and Peter being best friends. Don't forget about Electro. Oh yeah, and Peter's parents are secret agents. Oh, we can't forget about the death of Gwen Stacy. Now, am I missing anything? Oh yeah, let's just throw a fight with Rhino at the end and let's not even show the actual fight and cut straight to credits. I'm sure audiences are gonna love that. Yeah, it's safe to say that a lot of these creative choices did not go over well with a lot of Spider-Man fans. This movie wasn't complete garbage. I mean, Peter and Gwen's relationship is fully realized by the time we get to this movie. And I really love the chemistry between Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone. They literally take what could have been a super cringy romance, and because of their natural chemistry off screen, because they were actually dating in real life, they took this to a whole new level, and you actually felt that they genuinely cared about each other. So I will say that is a good thing. Also, the opening scene of Peter swinging through New York is probably one of the greatest Spider-Man scenes we've ever seen in live action. And the movie's Spider-Man suit was probably one of the best Spider-Man suits of all time. I think that's pretty much all I got when it comes to the positives. And to be honest, most of the problems with this movie can really be attributed to the fact that they just rushed to throw everything they possibly could in here. It's like they knew they weren't going to make a third movie, so they had to just shoehorn everything. Electro was a really cool idea for a villain, but I don't really think his origin story was really presented very well, and trying to balance him with all of the other things that they had in this movie just didn't do him any justice. So in summary, I would say that this movie had several individually great scenes, but you gotta get through a bunch of messy character arcs and an overstuffed plot in order to get to them. You're honestly better off just watching some of these scenes on YouTube and forgetting about watching the full movie. At number 8, I may potentially have one of my most controversial takes, and that would be Spider-Man Far From Home. I would put this in the same group as Amazing Spider-Man 2, where it's not a terrible movie, but I just think it's way too messy for what it could be. I don't want to start out bashing this movie, so I'll go ahead and say that Jake Gyllenhaal was an incredible Mysterio. Gyllenhaal has proved himself to be an incredible character actor, and he's great at playing a manipulating, sadistic, and charismatic villain. And I really thought his whole arc was probably the best part of this movie. And when it comes to the characterization of Mysterio as an actual Spider-Man villain, I thought they did pretty good. However, there are some major problems with this movie that I have, and it actually does decrease my enjoyment, which is why I knocked this down a couple pegs. One of the biggest things is the fact that Tony Stark literally entrusts his Edith glasses to literally a child. A 16-year-old child. I mean, these glasses are capable of summoning drone strikes and have the ability to find information on anybody that the glasses pick up in range. And you give them to a high schooler? That just seems super irresponsible, and it really doesn't add up considering that Tony Stark had a lot of character development in his last couple appearances, and I just feel like he'd be way more responsible than how this movie portrayed him to be. Maybe there's an actual explanation that I didn't pick up on, but it made no sense to me. And when it came to the thing that I really didn't like about this movie, was the humor. I do think that humor can make or break a movie, and in this case, it broke it. It felt like every single scene either had a joke or was building towards another punchline, and it rarely took itself seriously. And in the times where it does take it seriously, it feels a lot more jarring and more out of place. And that's what happens when you have a joke at every single corner. Maybe I'm just an old soul at this point, but to me, Dudes getting kicked in the crotch stopped being funny about a decade ago.
What's up, Flash Mob? How you guys doing? I'm here in St. Marco Polo's. Oh!
It was cringe, father.
Again, I don't hate this movie, but just like The Amazing Spider-Man 2, I would just rather go back and watch individual scenes on YouTube rather than watching the entire movie again. And so that's why I have it ranked at number 8. At number 7, I have Spider-Man 3. And here we are. Yet again, another studio that interfered too much in a movie's production and potentially ruined what could have been. There's so much proof of behind the scenes conflict between Sam Rami and the studio executives. I know that he actually didn't want Venom to be in this movie, but they've had to push it because we gotta sell toys. People want to see Venom, so we gotta give him Venom. While Sam Raimi wanted to have a lot more of a grounded plot centered around Sandman, and he almost had to begrudgingly put Venom in there. Also, Green Goblin's dead? Nah, no worries. Just make Harry the Green Goblin and make him have a bunch of amnesia so that we don't actually have him as a villain until later on in the movie, and we can sideline him without having to worry about it. That just feels so lazy. Also, coming at you with another controversial take, I don't like Peter Parker and MJ's relationship in pretty much all 3 of the Sam Raimi movies.
How dare you!
They have some good moments, but overall, their relationship to me at best is just meh. But then at worst, the relationship could be borderline abusive, and that goes for both of them. They always seem to be bickering and never quite see eye to eye. And they just don't strike me as a couple that actually loves each other. It seems like they just more so exist together. And I never was quite sold on the fact that they love each other and they would do anything for the other person. And we can't go much farther without talking about the script and direction. I feel like the script in this movie really towed the line heavily between bad and good. And I think together, this just kind of made it so bad that it was good.
Gonna cry?
I mean, there's so many memorable moments that people quote to this day, and they just make perfect memes.
See you, chump.
Now take all this.
Mr. Stark, I don't feel so good.
I would say my favorite character in this movie is J. Jonah Jameson, and not just because we share the same name. J.K. Simmons is very clearly hamming it up, and he is having an absolute blast in his role, and you just feed off of his energy anytime he's on screen. I thought Sandman's arc was written very well, and even though he had a very quick change at the end when he turned against Spider-Man, it was never truly because he's a bad guy. He was just trying to do whatever it took to get back to his daughter. Also, the action when we had it was actually really fun to watch. It was really entertaining to see Spider-Man and New Goblin team up against Venom and Sandman. And even though they did use quite a lot of CGI, it never quite felt like it was too much. And to be honest, it is nice every now and then to pop this movie in and travel back to a time where it really felt like Spider-Man as a character was just larger than life. At number 6, I have The Amazing Spider-Man. I thought Mark Webb, who is the director of this movie, was tasked with an impossible job of providing a new, fresh take on Peter that we hadn't have already seen before. And I thought for what he had to offer, he brought it. And let me just say, Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man is my favorite interpretation of live-action Spider-Man. Not Tom Holland, not Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield. And you can't change my mind. He brings so much charisma and life to this role.
You know, in the future, if you're gonna steal cars, don't dress like a car thief, man.
What are you? You a cop?
Really? You seriously think I'm a cop? Cop in a skin-tight red and blue suit. You know, you've got a mind of a true scholar, sir.
I was going more for one of the guys who do the luge.
Good thinking, good thinking. Use the window. Get out the window. There you go, you got it.
One gripe I had with Tobey Maguire is that sometimes he felt a little clunky when he was in the suit, didn't really quip as much, and overall just didn't have much physicality to his role. Andrew Garfield fully embraced what it meant to be Spider-Man. I know a lot of people have issues when it comes to his take on Peter Parker, but my defense to that would be, yeah, he's a little bit of a too cool for school and almost borderlines on being a little bit of a bully sometimes. I would say that falls in line more with the early comic book adaptations of Peter Parker. Because Peter Parker in the older comics was definitely a little bit more on the brittle side. He was super sarcastic. It didn't seem like he got along with a lot of people. It seemed very edgy and moody. Also, just like how I mentioned on The Amazing Spider-Man 2, the beginning of his relationship with Gwen Stacy in this movie is amazing. I just keep coming back to the fact that they have such great natural chemistry together. Are some of the lines they deliver a little cringy? Yeah. Sometimes they seem a lot like one of those like grungy couples that's like super cringy and like kissing in the hallway. Yeah, you got me on that one. They're so darn likable and so charming that you just can't not like them. Also, I thought Kirk Connors, or the Lizard, was also a great addition as the villain to this movie. I'm so glad they didn't try to reuse a villain from the Raimi trilogy and tried to step out on their own. And yeah, the villain's goals by the end of the movie seemed a little weird. Like, I guess he wanted to turn all of New York into his own personal, like, little lizards, but All right, man, sure, I guess. But that didn't give me enough to truly hate this character. I thought he was very serviceable. And I like that a lot of the villains in the world of Spider-Man that really make a difference and are super threatening to Peter Parker are the ones that are either close to learning his identity or at least have connections with Peter Parker and not Spider-Man. That really adds a whole new wrinkle. Also, I like that this movie actually took the time to follow Peter Parker and Spider-Man through their mistakes as they learn how to balance the great power with the responsibility. Because in this movie, Peter makes mistakes. He screws up. He has to learn from his mistakes in order to move forward. And I think the scene on the bridge with him consoling the little boy to try to save him and encouraging him to use his mask as comfort, I think it doesn't get much better than that when you're looking at the essence of the character of Spider-Man. At number 5, I have the OG Spider-Man movie. This movie really reignited the Spider-Man craze that was kind of laying dormant for a while. I mean, you gotta think this is the first time in a while that we actually saw a blockbuster Spider-Man on the big screen. I see this movie like a lot of the other early 2000s movies that came along with it, whether it's X-Men, Iron Man, Batman Begins. I kind of put them all in the same category. We're sure some of the special effects don't hold up as well, and some of the dialogue feels a little clunky. Those things can honestly be overlooked when you look at the actual impact that these movies had on society. When it comes to Spider-Man, this is about as true and faithful of a comic book adaptation as it gets. Not only does it stay true to Spider-Man's roots, but they also figured out ways to push the boundaries of what they could do from a technical perspective. They had to be creative with the stage and set designs. They literally pioneered the web swinging technology that it took to show Spider-Man swinging through New York with the limited stuff that they have, considering it was literally like, what, 2000? And when it comes to the actual Spider-Man suit, I feel like it had an awesome combination of the classic colors, but then also with a very modern design. And while Tobey Maguire is not my favorite portrayal of Peter Parker or Spider-Man, I still gotta give full credit to him for everything he's done for the character. Also, I got 2 words for you: Willem Dafoe. Literally, there is no Green Goblin without Willem Dafoe. He 100% brings the charisma, insanity, and then just the pure evil once the Green Goblin takes over Norman Osborn's body. Whenever you hear his maniacal laugh, you know you're in for a good time. Also, I think his suit overall is close to perfection, but the one thing I think they fumbled the bag on was his mask. I mean, what's the point of having such an expressive actor who uses his face for a lot of his portrayals, and then you literally cover it up with a mask where you can only see his eyes? I thought that was just a huge overstep. They even had some test footage of other masks that they were trying that accentuated his face a lot better. And I really wish they would have just gone all the way and tried for a just over-the-top Goblin face. And then MJ in this movie just kind of exists to just get kidnapped and scream over and over again.
Jerry, stop screaming!
But I guess she's not completely insufferable. Again, even though this isn't my favorite Spider-Man movie, I absolutely cannot take away all of the things that it's done to set the stage for future Spider-Man movies. At number 4, I have Spider-Man Homecoming. I know a lot of people give Tom Holland's Spider-Man a lot of crap for being Iron Boy Jr. or whatever the other thing is these days, but you gotta remember, this is the MCU. I actually liked Peter's dynamic with Tony in this movie. Also, it's about time that we finally get a young actor that actually looks like he's in high school. We finally don't have a 30-year-old trying to play a 16-year-old or a male model trying to look uncool. Now we finally get an awkward, weird, and relatable high schooler. I also like that they made this Spider-Man so much more quippy and just overall a lot more immature than previous Spider-Man. Because the way I see it, in this Homecoming trilogy, Spider-Man has a lot of growing up to do. I mean, they start out with building him up by having him rely on the suit, only to have Tony Stark take it away from him, where he has to learn what it takes to be Spider-Man without having a lot of his hand-holding or all these super cool gadgets that does a lot of stuff for him. He literally has to find out what it takes to become the true essence of Spider-Man. You tell me that this isn't a classic Spider-Man character arc. I thought the supporting cast was pretty great overall. I thought the standout was Ned Leeds as Peter Parker's best friend, and I thought they had a great dynamic together. Although I wasn't a big fan of the portrayal of Flash Thompson, and I found him to be more annoying than anything, but that's a small grievance I have. Also, can we talk about Michael Keaton's Vulture? Adrian Toomes is one of the best multi-dimensional and relatable villains in the MCU. He's just a blue-collar everyman who wants to provide for his family, and when he gets stiffed by the people in power above him, he does what he needs to do and kind of takes things in his own hands. He's not some mustache-twirling villain who just sits in the corner and cackles about how he's gonna get Spider-Man. We just see a man who's forced to use his cunning and resourcefulness for evil rather than good. And he doesn't actually oppose Spider-Man until Spider-Man gets in his way. Maybe it was just me, but my jaw absolutely hit the floor the first time in theaters when it was revealed that he was actually the father of the girl Peter was going to be taking to Homecoming. It was such a well-crafted scene overall, and it was genuinely terrifying as you saw Peter desperately trying to hold back his secret identity, but he eventually fails because Adrian Toomes is a smart guy and he takes a lot of time to try to piece together all of the things Peter has said, and he eventually figures it out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. This might be one of the best scenes in any Spider-Man movie. It was actually honestly kind of nice to see a fresh take on Aunt May. I know she gets a lot of the jokes for kind of being the hot aunt now and she's not really old, but I thought that provided a nice fresh opportunity for a lot more humor. But oh yeah, speaking of comedy, I actually do think that the comedy in this was used very well, especially because it's kind of a high school comedy. But unlike other movies who try a little too hard to be funny, I thought that when this movie had jokes, they landed. But then when they also needed time to let the drama kind of fill the air and build up more tension, they also took the time to build that up as well. So it didn't feel like you were just getting blasted in the head over and over and over and over again with all kinds of different types of jokes. It was clear that the writers and the director of this film respected the character of Spider-Man, and I respect them for it. At number 3, I have Spider-Man No Way Home. This movie was the epic finale of the Homecoming trilogy in the MCU. Every OG cast member is absolutely bringing their A game to this movie, except for Flash Thompson. I still hate that guy.
Spider-Man's best friend. You come at my boy, you come at Flash Thompson.
Shut up!
I'm done stalling. Let me get right to the point. The best thing this movie could have ever done was bringing back Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield to reprise their role as Spider-Man in this universe. Yeah, it was great seeing a bunch of the old villains come back that we haven't seen in a while. But the 3 Spider-Mans, Spider-Guys, Spider-Mans, Spider-Man? Yeah, Spider-Man. They are all the beating heart that propels this movie forward. I'm just so glad that Tobey and Andrew weren't just thrown into this movie as a quick cameo just to put butts in seats at the theater. Instead, they actually push this plot forward. They show up when Tom Holland's Spider-Man is at his absolute lowest after watching his aunt die in his arms. And each of the other Spider-Men have to pull from their past experiences, both good and bad, in order to speak into Peter's dilemma and encourage him how they were able to overcome their past trauma. This gives them the opportunity to fully connect with him where others maybe couldn't have reached him. This is just incredible stuff. Now, I do think that the multiverse story was probably a little clunky, and I do think that it raises more questions than answers. Like, let's look at Doctor Strange. I feel like his decision-making in this movie was way more questionable than people are talking about. Like, this man was willing to die to prevent the time stone from getting into the hand of Thanos. But then Peter comes up to him and asks him to literally wipe the memory of everybody on Earth of his existence with no consent. And his response to this is, okay, yeah, no problem, I got this. And then he gets mad at Peter for messing it up. Like, dude, you had so many other opportunities to sit down with him and really go through this and help him kind of unwind what's going on inside of Peter Parker's head. You're taking the word of an immature child and then you're gonna get mad at him when everything goes wrong when he did what an immature child does and interrupts him in the middle of what he's doing. That's a huge oversight on Doctor Strange's part, and we don't really see him take responsibility for that. Seemed kind of odd, but I'm not gonna let those issues detract from my enjoyment of this movie. Just seeing all 3 Spider-Men together, whether it's working together in the lab to create an antidote or fighting each other's villains side by side, it's just cinematic perfection. Although I want to give a special shout out to Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. I may be biased, but I think he brought his absolute A game to this movie. He really did have a lot to prove, especially with the way that his career as Spider-Man ended in his second movie. I don't think he was given a fair shake for things moving forward. And with it seeming very unlikely that he has a 3rd movie coming up, I'm glad that he got to kind of live out his dream of coming back and playing Spider-Man. And it seemed like he didn't want to waste a single moment. I think he steals the show in every single scene he's in.
Okay, Peter 1, Peter 2.
Peter 2.
Peter 3.
Peter 3.
All right, let's do this.
Let's
Ready?
go.
Wait.
I love you guys. Thank you.
And I feel like the writers respected his character even more and even gave him a scene where he saves Michelle to give him that closure from when he wasn't able to save Gwen. And that's how you know that everyone's aware that Andrew's version of Spider-Man still has a lot of unopened plot threads that we could possibly explore in the future. But then again, Sony sucks at making Spider-Man movies, so I wouldn't raise my hopes on that.
Are we trash?
Kinda.
Oh.
Coming in at number 2, I have Spider-Man 2. The best things about a sequel that's handled well is that you have the first movie to kind of deal with all the origin stuff, and in the second movie you can jump right into where the character's at, and I think that's exactly what this movie did with Spider-Man. Ironically, when I first watched this movie a while back, it actually inspired me to research the hero's journey arc that a lot of the comic book movies try to base all of their protagonists off of. And to combine that with my review, I want to take you guys through a couple of the steps on the hero's journey and show you how it matches up perfectly with Spider-Man 2. First, you have the epitome of the hero's journey, or in this case, the call to adventure. This involves the early part of the movie with Spider-Man saving bystanders and also learning how to balance life as Peter Parker.
Pizza time.
Then we transition to the facing challenges and obstacles. This is when we find out that Peter Parker's broke, he has to move out of Aunt May's house, he's also weighed down by the death of Uncle Ben and the guilt that follows, along with having to balance all of the weight of being Spider-Man. Then we get to the death of the character, and this involves him letting go of the responsibility of Spider-Man, which by the way is a great reference to the Spider-Man No More comic book arc. And this leads to him choosing a life with MJ rather than the responsibility of being Spider-Man. And then we get to the consequences, and this leads to the emergence of Doc Ock, and the city being in shambles because there's no Spider-Man to protect them. Then we get to the transformation and atonement. We begin this arc with Peter Parker suiting up once more as Spider-Man and taking a stand against Doc Ock, which leads to one of the best set pieces in Spider-Man history. The train sequence. Here we see Spider-Man choose to lay down his life to protect the people of New York. And in return, he gains their love and respect. And when it comes time for a secret identity to become revealed, they choose to keep it a secret for the good of everybody, all because of what he's done for them. I thought they conveyed this message beautifully.
He's mine! You want to get to him, you got to go through me.
And me.
Me too.
Then we get the return to form, and this is Spider-Man fully returning to his responsibility by the end of the movie and choosing to take on the weight of protecting New York. And this entire arc was handled amazing by Sam Rami and the writers of this movie. Also, I wanted to add that it's a good sign of a great movie where the villain's arc is actually almost as good as the hero's. We get introduced to the humble genius Otto Octavius. We see that he's a loving father, and he starts to become more of a mentor to Peter. His invention goes wrong, he loses his wife, and the arms that he's developed start to take control of his mind. And once his mind becomes corrupted, he basically lets all of his intrusive thoughts win and starts wreaking havoc in New York. This directly opposes Spider-Man, and because their plot lines are starting to intersect, they have no choice but to face each other head on. And it's cool that Spider-Man actually does try his best to save Otto. And when it all seems lost, Peter is finally able to get through to Otto, and Otto makes his own conscious choice to sacrifice himself to save everyone else from potentially being killed by the Collider. This is great stuff, and it's not just Spider-Man going, oh, psh, 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 I'm Spider-Man, psh, 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 psh. I like that we actually get invested in this character, and we rejoice with him when he's at his highest, but then we also watch him suffer when he's at his lowest. It just makes us want to root for him even more. And I truly believe that this is the greatest live-action Spider-Man movie of all time. But wait, didn't I have one more spot on my list? If you were thinking that, you're right. Because yeah, I do think Spider-Man 2 is the greatest live action movie of all time. There is one more project that I believe is the best overall Spider-Man movie of all time. And that movie is... Yeah, so it goes without saying, Into the Spider-Verse is #1. It's hard to find a place to begin with this movie. We get to see a fresh new perspective into the character of Spider-Man through the eyes of Miles Morales. And honestly, it was pretty great to see his relationship with his family, specifically his mom and dad. It's just something that we don't see much of when it comes to Spider-Man. And I thought it was actually really refreshing. I also like that they explored a little bit more of his relationship with his Uncle Aaron, and seeing them bond together throughout the movie made the payoff even more chilling when Miles Morales realizes that Uncle Aaron is in fact the Prowler. Also, when you look at Miles as a character, I like the fact that he actually doesn't have it all figured out. He fails several times in this movie. He doesn't just show up, beat the bad guys, and swing off into the distance. He has genuine character flaws that he has to learn to work through. You really see him struggle with the burden of becoming Spider-Man, and he really also struggles with a sense of belonging, especially when he feels like he's being surrounded by a lot more competent Spider-Man than he is. I mean, even his powers don't work for half of the movie. And for us, the audience, it just makes the journey feel so much more worth it when we watch him grow in real time. It's almost like we're learning and growing along with him. And I can't go much farther without talking about all the awesome Spider characters in this movie. I feel like each one of them brings something so unique to the table. It's worth mentioning that if you know me, you know that one of the biggest things I hate in movies is narration. So I should have hated a lot of the narration that was in this movie, right? Wrong. This is how you do narration right. The narration is used to introduce these new characters, but they do it to add to the story and give you a little bit more of a peek into these characters. And they also do it in a fun and unique way, which doesn't make it a bore to watch. It doesn't drone on and on. It keeps your attention the whole way through. The standouts in this group are definitely Peter B. Parker and Spider-Gwen. They both build up Miles in their own way, with Peter B. Parker being more of a mentor and Gwen is more of like a friend / love interest. Again, another thing that brings all these Spider people together is their shared trauma. And they do this awesome thing where they share the stories with each other to build up this sense of camaraderie and the feeling of they're not alone. So take a look at this. The connection between Miles and Peter B. Parker is that Miles kind of reignites the spark in Peter B. Parker. But then you look at Peter B. Parker, and his role is to build up confidence and strength for Miles. And then you have Spider-Gwen, who kind of stabilizes the group and keeps everybody grounded. The other side characters were a little bit more used for comic relief, but they also fit their roles perfectly. And with all of these characters they had to balance, the movie never felt overstuffed. In fact, I really couldn't get enough of all these characters. Also, the animation style of this movie was just positively jaw-dropping. I like that they adjusted the frame rate to make it feel a little bit more comic booky. And now that I mention it, it feels like this entire movie was just ripped out of a comic book. The colors, the art style, even down to the scene where Peter and Miles are escaping the lab and Peter throws a bagel at someone. It literally like shows up as bagel. I mean, that's just funny, man. The detail and hard work put in by all of the animators on this movie needs to be put front and center. But they never lose sight of what's important. To me, the spectacle should never replace the story. And in this case, the movie enhances it and makes it better. Also, the soundtrack of this movie may be one of the most memorable in any Spider-Man movie. The unmistakable style of the songs in this movie fits perfectly with the world that Into the Spider-Verse creates. Songs like Scared of the Dark by Lil Wayne and Elevate by DJ Khalil are mixed absolutely perfectly with what's happening on the screen. You could put all of the songs in this movie together and they wouldn't even pale in comparison to the one scene of Miles Morales on the skyscraper about to take his first step as a full-blown Spider-Man with What's Up Danger playing in the background. It might be the most memorable scene of this entire movie. Heck, of any Spider-Man movie. Just think about it. We're flying towards the climax of this movie. We're also watching Miles overcome his demons by taking a leap of faith. If you haven't seen this movie yet, what are you doing? Go watch it. But now that I've given you my ranking of all 9 Spider-Man movies, I want to hear your takes. Join me in the comment section below and tell me how you would rank all 9 Spider-Man movies. Let's get a conversation going. Feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you want to join the family. If there's anything specific that you want to hear my thoughts on, and this doesn't have to be Spider-Man, it could be anything, let me know, and who knows, I might even make a video about it. But with all that out of the way, I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.